Emily froze, her heart thumping in her chest. She'd known this conversation was coming, maybe not tonight, maybe not in this exact way, but she could feel it building over the last few months. Jason, she said, trying to keep her voice calm, we're married. We shouldn't need boundaries between us, right? Jason looked at her with tired eyes. That's exactly what I used to think too. But now, I'm not so sure. He leaned back, his gaze soft but firm. I love you. You're my best friend. But lately, it feels like we've been walking on top of each other. I don't have space to breathe, and I don't think you do either. Emily looked away, blinking back the sting in her eyes. So you think I'm smothering you? Jason sighed. Not smothering. Just, always there, always checking, always making sure I'm doing the right thing. She crossed her arms, defensive now. Well, maybe if I didn't have to wonder what you were doing, I wouldn't check. Her voice cracked on the last word, and for a moment the room went quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Jason rubbed his temples. That's exactly what I'm talking about. We both feel unsafe because we've lost trust. I'm not saying I'm perfect, I've crossed lines too. But we have to figure out what's healthy for us before we break completely. The word, break, sent a chill through her. Divorce wasn't something either of them had ever mentioned before. But lately, the silence, the tension, the second guessing, it all felt heavier than love. She slumped onto the couch beside him. So what are you saying, Jason? You want space. You want to live separately. He shook his head quickly. No, I want us to start respecting each other's personal lines. Like, you shouldn't have to feel guilty for needing alone time. And I shouldn't have to feel like I'm betraying you when I hang out with my friends. We need balance. Emily stared at him. Balance, she repeated softly. He nodded. Yeah, think about it. When we first met, we both had our own lives, our own passions. You painted, remember? You'd spend hours in that little studio, completely lost in your art. You were glowing back then. When's the last time you painted anything? Her lips parted slightly. She couldn't even remember. And me, he continued, I used to go on those early morning runs. You'd still be sleeping, and I'd come home with coffee for both of us. Now, I wake up, check emails, and go straight to work. It's like we forgot how to be ourselves while being together. Emily felt a tear roll down her cheek. He was right, painfully right. Somewhere between wedding vows, house payments, and endless routines, they'd lost the invisible line that separated me from us. I guess I thought marriage meant giving everything, she whispered. Every moment, every piece of yourself. Jason smiled gently. It does, but not all at once. You still have to protect parts of yourself, That's what boundaries are. They're not walls. They're respect lines. She took a deep breath, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. I don't even know where to start. He reached over, taking her hand. We start small. Let's promise not to check each other's phones. No secret tests. No tracking apps. She chuckled softly. You mean I'll never know how many times you watch football highlights when you say you're working? He laughed too, the first genuine laugh they'd shared in weeks. Exactly. You'll just have to trust that I'm not running away with Tom Brady. For the first time that night, the tension lifted a little. Emily leaned into the couch, feeling the warmth of his hand still in hers. Okay, she said, and in return, I'll try to stop analyzing every text you send. I'll give you space when you need it. He nodded. And I'll give you space too. I won't interrupt when you're journaling or working on your art. I'll stop assuming you're upset just because you want to be alone. She looked at him, surprised. You notice that? Jason smirked. Of course. You close the door halfway, like you want space but also want me to peek in. You've got this halfway boundary thing going on. Emily laughed, wiping her tears. Guilty. They sat there in silence for a while, their hands still touching, their hearts slowly sinking again. For years they'd believed love meant constant closeness, but now they were beginning to see that sometimes love means giving each other room to breathe. Later that night, as Emily climbed into bed beside Jason, she felt something she hadn't in a long time, safety. Not because he was there, but because she was finally starting to reclaim herself. Before turning off the lamp, she looked at him. Jason, do you think it's too late for us to reset? He turned toward her, his eyes soft. No, I think this is the first real step we've taken in a long time. She smiled faintly. Then tomorrow, I'm buying new brushes. And maybe you can go for that run again. He grinned. Deal. But I'm still bringing you coffee after. When the light went out, they both lay there quietly, not touching, not talking, just being. And for the first time, the silence between them didn't feel like distance. It felt like understanding. Outside, the city hummed, cars, streetlights, people rushing home to lives just as complicated, just as fragile. Inside that small apartment, two people were learning what every couple eventually must: love doesn't mean merging into one person. It means staying whole, side by side. Emily drifted to sleep with that thought, that maybe, just maybe, healthy boundaries weren't barriers to love. They were bridges back to it. 3 months later, the rhythm of Emily and Jason's life looked different. Not perfect, never perfect, but steadier, calmer, more intentional. Saturday mornings had become their quiet ritual again. Jason would lace up his running shoes at dawn, grab his earbuds, and jog through the neighborhood park while the sun climbed above the trees. When he returned, sweat glistening on his forehead, he'd drop 2 coffees on the kitchen counter, one black for him, one oat milk latte for Emily. And she'd be sitting at the table, still in her robe, paintbrush in hand, the morning light spilling across her sketchpad. They didn't talk much in those moments. They didn't need to. That's what boundaries had given them, peace. But rebuilding trust wasn't as simple as a few peaceful mornings. It took hard conversations, honest reflection, and sometimes, uncomfortable silence. One night, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emily broke the stillness. "Can I ask you something?" she said softly. Jason looked up from his drink. "Anything. Do you ever feel like we're just pretending everything's okay? Like we're trying so hard to fix things that we're afraid to admit we still hurt?" Jason set his glass down. The question hit deeper than she realized. "Yeah," he admitted. "Sometimes I do. But I think that's part of healing, Em. We can't erase everything overnight. Boundaries don't fix pain, they just stop new wounds from forming." She nodded slowly, taking in his words. The next morning, Emily faced a test she didn't expect. Her best friend, Megan, called her while she was in the studio. "Hey, are you okay with Jason coming to my brother's barbecue next weekend? He said you might skip it." Emily froze. Jason hadn't mentioned the barbecue at all. Her first instinct was to storm into the living room, to demand an explanation. The old version of her would have done exactly that, heart pounding, questions firing. But she caught herself this time. She took a breath and reminded herself of the promise they made: ask, don't accuse. So she walked into the living room calmly and said, "Hey, Megan just called. She mentioned the barbecue. You didn't tell me you might go without me." Jason looked up from his laptop, startled. "Oh, yeah, I was going to ask if you wanted to come. I wasn't sure if you had that art event next weekend." Emily tilted her head. "You mean the gallery meet-up? That's Sunday, not Saturday." Jason's face softened. "Then great, come with me. I'd love that." It was a small misunderstanding, nothing major, but it reminded Emily how easy it was to slip into old habits of suspicion. She smiled, relieved, and sat beside him. "Okay, just making sure we're on the same page." He reached over and squeezed her hand. "Thanks for asking instead of assuming." She grinned. "I'm learning." Later that week, Jason had his own boundary moment. Emily's phone buzzed late one evening while she was in the shower. A name popped up on the screen: Ryan, Art Studio. The old Jason would have checked the message. This time, he stared at it for a second, then looked away. When Emily came out, she noticed the phone flipped over and smiled knowingly. "You saw the message, didn't you?" He chuckled. "Yeah, but I didn't look. Figured if it's important, you'll tell me." She beamed. "It was just about the new paint order. But thank you, really." They were learning that trust wasn't about blind faith, but about small daily choices. A few weeks later, they decided to take a weekend trip to the coast. The beach had always been their happy place before life got complicated. The drive was filled with laughter, old songs, and quiet moments where the world seemed to shrink down to just the two of them. When they arrived, Emily ran straight to the shoreline, her feet sinking into the cool sand. Jason followed, wrapping his arms around her waist as the waves crashed in the distance. "Feels like forever since we did this," she said, leaning back against him. "I know," he whispered. "It feels good to just be." That night, they sat by a fire pit outside their small beach cabin. The stars stretched endlessly above them, and the crackle of the flames filled the air. Emily glanced at him and said, "You know, boundaries used to scare me. I thought they meant distance. But now They feel like safety nets. Jason smiled. Because they are. They let us be close without losing ourselves. She reached for his hand. I think every couple should learn that. He nodded. Especially in the US, we live in a world where everything's shared, posted, tracked. People think if you don't show every part of your life, something's wrong. But the truth is, privacy is love too. Emily looked at him, her heart full. You sound like a therapist. He laughed. Hey, maybe I missed my calling. They sat in silence for a while, the firelight dancing across their faces. Then Jason said quietly, I'm proud of us. She turned to him, smiling. Yeah, he said, we almost lost each other because we didn't know how to draw lines. Now those same lines are what keep us together. Emily leaned against his shoulder. Maybe love isn't about breaking boundaries for someone, it's about respecting them enough to keep them. Jason kissed her forehead. Exactly. The weekend ended too soon, as all good ones do. But when they drove back home, something had shifted. The arguments that used to explode over tiny things now turned into calm discussions. They laughed more, forgave quicker, and understood that not every difference was a threat, some were just part of being two individuals sharing one life. On a quiet Sunday evening, Emily sat in her studio painting again. Jason peeked in, smiling. What are you working on? He asked. She stepped aside to show him the canvas. It was a simple picture, two trees standing side by side. Their roots touched underground, but their trunks stood apart, each reaching toward the sky in its own direction. Jason stared at it for a long time. That's us, he said finally. Emily smiled. Yeah, together, but separate, connected, but growing individually. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. That's the healthiest kind of love, Em. She turned to face him. And the hardest one to learn. He kissed her softly. But we did. As the months went on, their story became a quiet example to their friends, not a fairy tale, but a real marriage. They didn't post everything online, didn't need validation from likes or comments. Instead, they lived their boundaries every day, through honesty, respect, and a love that allowed room for individuality. Because the truth was simple, boundaries weren't barriers. They were bridges that kept love steady when the world around them tried to pull it apart. And as Emily stood one evening looking at her finished painting, the two trees rooted together beneath the earth, she smiled. She finally understood what every couple in America, or anywhere, needs to know. Healthy love isn't about possession. It's about freedom, respect, and trust.